We are back out in the shop and we are ready to continue attacking the repairs on this truck bed. Now, as I said last week, I went ahead and I did the other fender patch here. So we've got that all taken care of. What we're gonna be focusing on today is this lower quarter panel. Let me get you in for a quick look. This is by far the worst spot on this bed. We've got some really serious rot down here. The remnants of an original patch here, which was done with some like very thin tin almost, it looks like. It looks like it was glued on originally and then just bondoed over. So you can see how thick they had to lay in the bondo here to cover up that patch because they did it right over the original side of the bed. So we're gonna get all this cut out. We're gonna come up as high as we can here. I've already done some work on the back of the bed here, doing a little probing just to see what was available for us. This is pretty clean all up along the side here. So we're probably gonna stitch this in right along here, right up to the underside of the tail light here. And then we'll come up the side and down the side of the truck as high as we can. The other thing I've already gone ahead and done is removed some of the braces that were under here. And there is a corner brace that's underneath here that is spot welded to the bottom quarter of the panel. That is also completely rotted out. So once we get some of this cut out, I'm gonna reassess this brace up here. I'm gonna have to do something. I don't know if I'm gonna do it today. What I'm thinking is when I put this bed up on the tailgate to wire wheel the whole bottom side and paint it, that's when I might go ahead and repair that corner brace. We'll see, because it might be easier with the sheet metal cut out now to just go ahead and fix that, but something's gonna have to be done because it's just kind of the corner remnants of that brace in the back corner. So we wanna repair that, at least get something structural back in there to help keep the quarter panel from flopping around. So the first thing I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna actually cut out a lower portion of this quarter below where our actual cut line is gonna be, so I can start to get that patch panel fitted in and figure out what I need to cut, where I need to cut, how it's gonna fit in there. So for all you guys that have been watching, you already know this is my grandfather's old work truck. I don't know if I've ever talked about it before, but my grandfather was a carpenter. I might have mentioned that at one point or another, but I found it interesting. I had to disassemble the back tail light area for this, and I got in there and I found there was some big chunk of something in there, and I pulled it out. And this is actually an old piece of trim that had fallen through the top stake pocket and made its way back behind the tail light. So I just, you know, it's a piece of garbage, obviously, but it's kind of an interesting little, you know, connection to my grandfather, knowing that, you know, yeah, this just reinforces, yeah, this was his work truck. He used this thing hard. It was used and abused, and we're finally going to give it a little bit of love and hopefully get it back up and on the road. So I don't know, that just had a little sentimental attachment to that, you know, just that little piece of trim that was down in there. So kind of cool to think about. So I've got this little quarter section cut off here. Let's take a look. And now you can see just how bad this brace is back here. So this is all pretty solid on the back side. There's a little bit of rot in there, but this corner brace here is pretty well shot. And now that I've got this cut out, I'm just gonna be real and honest and realize this is gonna be easier to do with this off the bed. So with this section of the bed cut out. So I'm most likely going to go ahead and fix this before we get to repatching back in the sheet metal. So I'm going to have to assess that, but before I do that, I do want to kind of fit the patch panel back up and get an idea of how high up the panel we're going to be able to cut. We do have a lot of new subscribers and watchers to the channel in the last couple weeks, so you know, I might be repeating myself a little bit on some things, because if you haven't seen the past videos, I kind of want you to understand what we're doing here, but you'll notice that my patch panel is already painted. And the reason for that is I'm going to be leaving the weld lines like you see here exposed, so, and raw, just like this. So in order to get a uniform look, I went ahead and I prepared and painted all these patch panels ahead of time. I did the same thing with the fender well patch and these lower quarter patches, so that when I weld them in, we're getting that scarring and the burning paint marks and all the things like that that will help it kind of look uniform. So that's the idea behind that. Let's go ahead. Yeah, this can actually get this in a lot better than before. Kind of get an idea here. Yeah, so we are going to be able to take this up pretty high. I want to, normally with these patch panels, I said this before as well, you would only use what is necessary. Now, because this panel is so full of Bondo and everything else, and the metal is so crusty behind the Bondo, we're going to use as much of this panel as I can. You know that, like I said, that's normally not what you would do. You normally want to only cut out exactly what you need. But in this case, this is so bad that I'm going to end up coming a good ways up the side of this bed. Yeah, so it looks like we're going to be able to take a pretty good portion of this out. And we're going to have to match this up with our fender well here, which is not going to be perfect, but we'll get her close. Yeah. I don't love the fit around the back corner here either. This back corner is much more rounded over than the actual panel itself is, the patch panel is. So we may have to do some work down there. I probably will take as little of this corner as I can. Yeah, and what we'll end up doing is we'll come over the side here. We'll come down on this side of the panel, and then we'll wrap around below the tail light, and then we'll just have to kind of French that in the corner and get it all looking nice there. So, okay, before I go ahead and start this, I want to evaluate this corner patch, this corner brace, and see what we are getting ourselves into there. All right, so up under the truck, you can see we've got this little corner brace in here that welds to the back panel of the bed and then extends down to catch the lower quarter panel lip down here. So we can see this is pretty well gone. I mean, this is all just flaking and rusted clean through here. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go ahead and remove this. It looks like there's probably 1, 2, maybe 3, 4 spot welds holding that in. And then there is an additional brace on the back side here that it's spot welded to on the lower portion of this. And then obviously this lower lip is all rotted out as well. I don't know how much of that I'm actually going to be able to salvage either. So I may end up having to just cut this out behind where it's spot welded in, and then we'll try and make a new patch that replicates this one. Got a fresh sheet of poster board here. I've got our brace here. We're gonna just mark this thing out how I want to do this. So I want to try and make this as much out of one piece as I can. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna mark up the edge right up alongside this edge. I'm gonna come along the top as well here. I'll mark the bottom side. And then I'm just gonna roll this over. We're gonna mark down along all the sides touching there. And we've got a lot of missing panel here, so we're just gonna kind of fill in the gaps. And we're gonna run this along the bottom side. This is kind of ugly. We'll clean it up though. Grab my straight edge here. I'm gonna have a straight edge here. I'm gonna put this back and I'm gonna mark my corners here and here where this is gonna be folded over. Yeah. So we need to ignore this line. And this is actually gonna come over here. Like that. And then we've got a line here. I'm going to dash this line. This is where a fold is going to be in the panel. And then we'll come up here, and this is where this fold is going to be. And then the other thing I want to do is I want to add, we've got this edge to give this piece a little bit of rigidity here where it comes around the corner, so we're going to add that back in. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this out. And this is just our kind of first attempt here. This is very crude, very rough at the moment. But this is just to get a general idea of how this patch is gonna work. I'm just gonna go ahead and cut this out. All right, now I'm going to fold along my fold lines here. Okay, got that one there. I'm gonna snip this in that corner. Okay, so this is kind of what our patch here looks like. All right, so now you can see I've got something that resembles our original piece here. So let's kind of fit this in and see what we're dealing with here. So I can see everything up here is a pretty good fit, right? All this looks pretty good. Where I'm really woefully short on material is down here at the bottom. So you can see, even when I fold this over tight, we kind of made an approximation there. So I know that I need to add, let me grab my straight edge here. When that's tied up there, I know I need to add 3/4 of an inch to the bottom of this patch panel. So I'm going to add 3/4 of an inch to this tab, and then we'll cut another one of these out, match it up with this. If it looks good, then we're going to go ahead and cut this out of a flat sheet of steel, and we'll start bending it into place, getting it welded up, and we'll get it in the truck. Here we go, here's the result. I got our old panel here, obviously, and our replacement. We got a little bit of fine tuning to do. It's not quite perfect yet. One of the things about the difference in the two here, I use the brake to make this long bend here in the corner, and obviously this one is not as sharp of a bend, so that threw some of my dimensions off just a hair, but overall this is going to be more than adequate to replace this old panel. I think I'm a hair longer along the side dimension here, so I'll just set this up just a little bit higher in the bed when I install it. I also have a lot of excess on this flange here, so I may end up trimming this down. For now, I'll probably install it once I get all the kinks kind of worked out of this panel. I'll probably just install it the way it is, and then when we install the quarter panel, we'll mark it where the quarter overlaps, and we'll trim this down before we weld in the quarter panel. So I want to get this thing fine-tuned a little bit and get it welded up in the corner down here, and as well as in the corner up here. Okay, so we got this rust hole here, as I showed earlier, and that goes all the way through. You can see it comes all the way through there. What I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to slice a square out of this, and then just come back in here with a single piece of patch. There are two overlapping panels here, but for simplicity, I think I'm just going to cut this rod out here on the inside, and then cut a square out on the outside panel here to patch over the top and leave it at that. It's just going to be a simpler way to do this rather than trying to get patch both pieces here. There should still be plenty of structural rigidity in there. Okay, just hit that with the wire wheel to kind of get an idea, knock a lot of the the big chunks of rust off and get an idea how far back I need to cut here. This whole piece is pretty rotted out all the way down through here. I'm probably gonna have to get in here with the plasma cutter as well to cut this out because I'm gonna have a hard time getting the cutoff wheel in here. I've got the cutoff piece here that I just cut out of the truck bed. So I'm going to use this to make a template for the patch that I'm going to cut to fit in there. And then we'll go down and we'll fine tune things with the patch. All right, so this patch should kind of fit over my hole here. Yep, and it does. Just barely. That's exactly what we want because we don't want to be down here taking a bunch more material out. So I got the patch where I want it there. We're just going to mark along the edges. Okay, so now with my marker in there, I know I need to remove the lines right up to the black of the marker. I don't actually need to remove the line itself. I just need to remove right up to the line. All right, we got that kind of smoothed out. And I was thinking about it, rather than 2 layers of sheet metal, I think I've got some 3/16 left laying around somewhere. I think I'm just gonna cut a 3/16 patch for this. Yeah, look at that, it's perfect. Perfect, perfect. I have to round the edges over, but other than that, that fits really nicely. Cool, all right, let's cut a patch. I ended up changing my mind and I did cut out 2 individual patches. I'm just going to drill a couple holes to plug weld these patches together. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna taper the top edge down pretty good so that I can get penetration all the way through to that back patch into that panel. And then we're just gonna buzz this whole thing in all at one time. The 3/16 was way overkill for what we needed. So I think my next move here is I'm gonna get one of these fit to be the back patch, and then I will plug weld these together, and then I will grind the top one kind of into shape where I need it, and then we'll go ahead and get it buzzed in. All right, I got my 2 pieces trimmed to fit, and I just drilled a couple small like 3/16 holes in this one just to plug weld these 2 together. I'm not ultimately super worried about them being tacked together. It's just going to be for ease of installation of these 2 panels at once. You'll also see I tapered down the edge here so that when I go to weld in, I'm getting penetration all the way through to that lower piece of sheet metal back to the original steel as well. So I will tack these up and then we'll get them welded in place. So I was just about to weld these together, but the first thing I want to do is I'm going to hit these with some weld through primer on either side. Okay, let the weld through primer set up here. I'm just going to fit my panels together here. Trigger stuck on me there. Struggling a little bit to weld through that primer, but we're getting it. All right, that's all I'm really after. We don't have to go nuts on that. Like I said, this is just for ease of handling. It's pretty hot, so let it cool down for a minute and then we'll get this thing installed. Okay, one in that corner, and then I'm gonna move my clamps around a little bit here so I can keep everything flush on the panel between the old sheet metal and the patch. All right, I got the 4 corners tacked. I'm gonna take one last good look here. All right, here we go. That's what the patch looks like. It's okay. I mean, it's a little ugly. There's still a lot of rust or oxidation in this panel. It's not rusted through, but there's a lot of surface oxidation, and that comes through in the weld, and you know, it's about as good as we can make it. So I think what I need to do next, I probably need to get in here with a die grinder and clean up all these welds, flatten them out, so that I don't have any interference with the brace that we have to put back in here. So I'll grab the die grinder and we'll clean up these welds. Fine tuning done on this bracket, and now we get one last look of the before and the after. Look at how rusty and crusty this was, and how much better off we're going to be having this in there. Even if it's not the prettiest thing in the world, it's going to do the job, and it's just going to be much more functional than this. This really wasn't doing anything at that point. So this will help keep the rear quarter panel from flopping around. It actually ties into the bottom of the quarter panel right here. The quarter panel wraps around and under and then gets spot welded to this panel here. So now that I've got this all welded up and kind of shaped up the way I want it, I'm feeling really good about it. I've got my measurements on where it needs to go under the truck. We're going to drill out a couple of holes for plug welds in here, and then I'm just gonna go and finally get this thing installed so we can move on to that bottom quarter panel patch. So I'm gonna get one last update here before I get this welded in. I went ahead and I sprayed the weld through primer on the back side of our bracket and the back side of this. And then what I did was I just fit the bottom quarter patch loosely over approximately where it's going to sit in the panel. I've got some play in it, but I'll show you here why that was important to kind of get that where it needed to go. I need to set the height of this bracket, and I did take a measurement off this back cross brace down to the bottom, and I matched the other side. The challenge I had was my bend down here was way off, so if you look, you can kind of see the shadow line of where the original bend was. So I had like a good 3/4 inch gap between the bottom of the panel, fender panel, and this brace. So what I did was I reworked that fold. I opened it up and made this a little more concave and wrapped it around a little shallower angle. That way now, when we bring this panel in, you can see it fits pretty nicely in there. I have a little bit of gap up here in the front where I should have had a little bit more metal on this brace, but there's more than enough metal here to get a couple of plug welds in on that quarter panel and get it tacked in place. So everything's looking really good. I really like the placement of this bracket. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and get this welded in. All right, there you go. One last look what that looks like. Turned out really nice. I'm really happy with that. So, and again, you can see now when we go to when we go to put the bottom quarter in, you can see how nice of a fit this is now. If I can show you that there. It fits nice and snug. It profiles to the quarter panel nicely, and then all that looks good. I can trim any excess off, overhang off. So looks really good there. Let's take a look from the outside real quick. Unfortunately, we didn't get to finish up what I was hoping to do today, which was to get this patch installed. You know, that's kind of the complications of doing a bigger project like this, where we know there's a lot of rotted stuff on it. We just don't know what all's rotted. You start removing things, you start finding things. And today was one of those days where we had to take a step backward so that the next time we're out here, we can take a step forward, which is okay. We're making progress. This is kind of the last of the worst of the rust we're going to encounter. There's some bad spots in the bed we're going to have to patch, but I don't think we're going to have to make any more brackets or do anything like that. So on a positive note, things should be a little bit more straightforward moving forward. But I'm out of time today, so that means I'm out of time for this episode. So I appreciate each and every one of you that watches my videos. I appreciate you guys subscribing, liking, commenting on the videos. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. I've got a ton of videos over the last 6 months from where we started stripping this truck down to the bare chassis, building out the chassis, and doing all the work on the bed so far. So what I put up every week is what I get done every week. So you guys are kind of usually about a week behind me, but each video is a week's worth of progress. So as I said in the last video, we're out here, we're chipping away, chipping away, chipping away. That's what we're trying to do. Make baby steps towards getting this project finished, getting this truck back on the road. And I hope that's what you guys are doing on your projects. Because remember, if you don't work on your projects, they will not work on themselves. Get out in the garage, get building, and I'll see you on the next episode of Cody Builds.